All right, in the last video of chapter 3, we're going to set up how to write matrix equations and how to use inverses in order to solve those matrix equations. So a matrix equation looks like this. Let's say you've got a system of equations. Let's just do the same generic system that we used in the 3-7 section. Okay, so that is your generic system of equations. So here's how you set up. We can put these into a matrix, and it looks like this. Okay, so first they start by kind of just writing both sides as a matrix, like this. So we can write the left-hand side as the product of the coefficient matrix and the variable matrix. So we're going to write coefficient matrix just by pulling the coefficients off of x and y. And then there's the variable matrix, so times xy. So remember what happens is you'll end up multiplying this by this, and that's where you get the ax plus by, and that'll be this item up here. And then you'll get the next one by multiplying this row by the one column, and that's where the cx plus dy will come from. And then equals mn. All right, so the way the book sets these up is they label the coefficient matrix A, and then they label the variable matrix with a capital X, and then they label the coefficient matrix with a B. All right, so each one, so A is the coefficients. We're literally just pulling the coefficients off of X and Y. The variable matrix is only the variables of a system, so just the X, Y. And then the constant matrix is only the constants of a system. All right, so just the M and N. Constants are simple numbers without variables attached to them. So we've got A times X equals B. So that is our matrix equation. All right, remember matrices are notated with capital letters. So to solve matrix equations, what we're trying to do is get the x by itself. So remember, if you're solving like just a normal equation, say you were trying to get this x by itself, you'd divide both sides by a. And really what you're doing when you divide both sides by a is you're multiplying by a number's inverse. So say like this is a 4, dividing by 4 is the same as multiplying by 1/4. And 1/4 is the inverse of 4. So in order to get the x by itself, what we do is we multiply both sides by a inverse. Okay, so just to recap, let's talk about how we would solve any other equation. Okay, so let's do like normal equations. So this is the stuff that I was just saying out loud. So the normal equation, if you just had something simple like this, like I said, in order to get the x by itself, technically you'd be dividing both sides by a, but we could consider that we're multiplying by 1/a. And 1/a would be the inverse of a, and those two things cancel each other out, and they leave you just with the x. And so then this would be b times 1/a, which I guess would really be b/a. Okay, so with matrix equations, you have A times X equals B. Just like we did here, you multiply by the inverse. So to multiply by the inverse, we multiply both sides by A inverse, which we learned about on the previous section. But you have to be really careful when you're multiplying matrices, because it's important that if you multiply on a certain side, because remember, matrix multiplication is not commutative. So if you're going to multiply this one on the left, we have to multiply this one on the left. So these two will cancel out. We'll have the x by itself, and we'll have A inverse times B. So to figure out what x and y are, aka to get this matrix by itself, we left multiply each matrix by A inverse. Okay, so that's kind of our basics. That's how we're going to go through and solve these. So the solution ends up being the product of the inverse times the constant matrix. So we've got a couple of real-world examples here, some story problems. We're going to set up our equations first and then figure out how to solve them. So Dante and Erica just returned from a comic book store that sells new and used comic books. Dante spent $11.25 on 3 new and 4 old books. Erica spent $15.75 on 10 used, and 3 new ones. Okay, so comic books of one type are sold at the same price. We want to figure out how much a new comic book is. So let's say U would be the price of a used book, and N would be the price of a new book. So it tells us how many of each type they get, so we're left to figure out how much each one costs. So let's set up an equation for Dante. So Dante got 3 new books and 4 used books, and he spent $11.25. And then Erica got 3 new books and 10 used books, and she spent $15.75. Okay, so you can already see with these decimals, it would be kind of unfortunate to do any sort of other method. So this is just an alternate method that we can use here. So we're going to set up the matrix equation. So A is just the coefficients. So we're taking 3 and 3, the number of new, and then 4 and 10. We don't know what our variable matrix is, so we're trying to find N and U. And then B is just the constants, 11.25 and 15.75. Okay, so here's the way this works. In order to find X, we know it's going to be A inverse times B. That means we need to find A inverse first. So A inverse, remember you do 1 over the determinant, so 3 times 10 is 30, minus 3 times 4 is 12. And then we've got 2 things. We swap these. So 10 goes here, 3 goes here, and then we make these ones negative. So -4 and -3. All right, so let's simplify that up. So this ends up being a 1/18 out front. So we're going to distribute the 1/18. So I'm going to have 10/18, -4/18, -3/18, and +3/18. Okay, so you can already see that this equation would probably be nasty to do out by hand because you can see how gross these are. So let's clean that up just a little bit. So I can just reduce these down. So like this one you can reduce by 2 and you'd get 5/9. This one you can reduce by 2, -2/9. This one reduces by 3 to get -1/6. And this one also reduces by 3 to get +1/6. So we are multiplying, this is A inverse, so we want A inverse times B. Okay, so we're going to multiply these together. So this one right here is a 2 by 2, and this one is a 2 by 1. So I know for sure my answer is going to be a 2 by 1. The insides match, I can look at the outside dimensions. Okay, so first row, first column, so I multiply 5/9 times 11.25 plus -2/9 times 15.75. And then second row, only column right here, -1/6 times 11.25 plus +1/6 times 15.75. So once I get this all cleaned up, this will give me my values. I am going to plug this into a calculator. Okay. So I have 5/9 times 11.25, and then plus -2/9 times 15.75. Okay, so that is 275 for the first value. Next value, -1/6, times 11.25 plus +1/6 times 15.75. So this gives me 75 cents. So you can see if you look at the comparison here and here, that means each new book was $2.75, each used book was 75 cents. So to make sure that you're actually answering the question, what is the price in dollars of a new comic book? The answer to that question would be $2.75. Okay, let's do the same thing for this next one. So the Booster Club plans a picnic. Rental company charges $15 to rent a popcorn machine and $18 to rent a water cooler. Club spends $261 for 15 items. So let's say P is the number of popcorn machines. and W will be the number of water coolers. Okay, so let's set up our equation. So the club spends $261. So you're going to have one equation that represents the amount of money. So it was $15 per popcorn machine plus $18 per water cooler, ends up spending a grand total of $261. And then there's a total of 15 items, which means the number of popcorn machines plus the number of water coolers was a total of 15 items. So that's our system of equations. So how many of each do they rent? So we're going to do the exact same thing that we did up there. So A is our coefficient matrix. So we're going to take the 15 and the 1 off of variable P, and 18 and 1 off of variable W. And then X is what we're trying to figure out. That's the P and the W, so we want to solve for those. And then B is our constant matrix, the 261 and the 15. Okay, so remember, according to our formula, if we want to get X, it's A inverse times B. So we want to find A inverse first, and then multiply it by B. So A inverse equals 1 over the determinant. So 15 times 1 is 15, minus 1 times 18 is 18. And then we set up our new matrix. So remember, we swap these. So 1 up here, 15 down here. And then we make these negative. So negative 18 here, negative 1 here. Okay, let's clean that up. So this is a negative 1/3 on the outside, so we can distribute that. So 1 over negative 3, negative 18 over negative 3, negative 1 over negative 3, and 15 over negative 3. So we'll clean that up. So we've got a negative 1/3, positive 6, positive 1/3, and negative 5. So that is A inverse. Okay, so finally we are going to left multiply A inverse times B, and that'll give us our answer. Okay, so again, this is a 2 by 2. This is a 2 by 1. So I know for a fact that my new one is going to be a 2 by 1. So I multiply the first row by the only column here. So I have negative 1/3 times 261 plus 6 times 15. That's my first spot. And then second row, only column, I multiply positive 1/3 times 261, and then plus negative 5 times 15. All right, so again, if you want, you can just plug those into a calculator. So 261, I'm going to divide by negative 3, same as multiplying by negative 1/3, plus 6 times 15. So that gives me 3 in this spot, and then down here, 261 divided by 3, instead of multiplying by 1/3, and then plus negative 5 times 15. And that gives me 12. Okay, so that is my answer matrix, and so that means I had 3 popcorn machines and 12 water coolers. And that is your final answer.